videos that appear to show victims on the ground in an open area, in a green space. I'm sure you're seeing that too. And that's the one thing we also don't know. We don't know if the shooting happened indoors or outdoors. We did hear from people who said they heard gunshots. And then we talked to a gentleman who was in the student union building who said he never heard gunshots, which seems hard to believe because obviously if someone's shooting guns on campus like that, you would think, especially in close proximity, you would hear it.
Yeah, I have an opinion on that, Amy, but it's unconfirmed. I would love to share that with you, but I just think it would not be number one. It's just wrong to do that. But I would tend to think, and this is just my opinion, the shooting may have started outside, and it's also my opinion that I believe the gunman may have ran inside one of the buildings with police in pursuit, and I do believe there were some shots fired subsequently to that chase. Is just my opinion, unconfirmed, Amy.
Okay. Yeah, well, that would make sense based on some of the videos that we're seeing. But again, we just at this point, Jamie, and it's hard to know. And we used to be that you could, if you see it, you can believe it. In today's world of AI and how quickly these social media channels work, you really can't anymore. It's sad, but we're in a situation where we can't always believe what we see because unfortunately things can be manufactured pretty quickly.
Off the topic, but on the topic, Amy, I just encourage people, if you're on social media, we're all on TikTok, Facebook, what have you, you see these go down like that. Remember, there's an Amy or there's a John and Susie who have students or someone involved in that event. And we just must be prudent in what we post, especially if we don't know the facts. I mean, there's a mom and a dad and a family somewhere sitting on pins and needles waiting for accurate information. And I think it's improper to do that on social media, and it hurts families like yourself.
Yeah, absolutely, Jamie.
Jamie, you talked about the importance of police kind of going through and talking with witnesses and trying to decipher what exactly happened. I want to talk, if we can, about what they might be looking for when it comes to evidence, physical evidence, and that kind of thing, especially in a scene that potentially could be spread out rather largely in throughout an area of campus there.
Yeah, number one, life and property is second. They're looking for that shooter. So once they secure that scene, then they're going to rush these kids into a holding area, which we've talked about. So, these students are being contained in these areas also so they don't contaminate that crime scene. So what you do is methodically do the crime scene investigators, just like you did looking for the shooter. You're going to mark all the evidence, all the physical evidence. You're going to tag it, and then later to be literally collected and put into evidence. But they've got to get a handle on where this shooter was and make sure there's no evidence that kids are going to trample over or destroy running out of the building. So that's another reason, containing these children or these young adults in these rooms to not contaminate the crime scene. And then you're going to go methodically and start literally interviewing students and faculty who either seen or heard something, and they'll become witnesses in that permanent record of the report for any possible prosecution. So it's just like any other crime scene. It's just larger and more people involved, Garrett.
Well, it is 2 o'clock, and so if you're just now joining us here on Fox Local, we want to kind of reset things for you here. And let you know a little bit about what is going on and what we have confirmed at this point, what we are tracking at this point after reports this afternoon, just after noon, of an active shooter on the campus of Florida State University in Tallahassee. The Associated Press reporting some numbers, at least 6 people hospitalized, including 1 person in critical condition. The other patients being in serious condition. That from a spokesperson for Tallahassee Memorial Healthcare, who maybe about an hour ago first confirmed that they were treating and receiving patients from this shooting.
That's right. The only information we have from Florida State University was a little over an hour ago, which was to continue to shelter in place because they are dealing with an active shooter situation. I'm hearing from the mother of one of the students who was inside the student union when this all happened. These kids barricaded themselves inside of a classroom. They said that their professor left the room that they were left there in the room without locks on the doors. And so they closed the doors. They put tables behind the doors to try to secure the room. They were then escorted out by police, who brought them to another building and asked them to shelter in place there. And I just heard again from this mother. She says her daughter says they are told they may be releasing them soon, but holding them in place to perhaps keep them from seeing the crime scenes outside, which would kind of go back to what we just discussed with Jamie Copenhaver, our security expert, who has been joining us, talking a little bit about where the crime scene is. And it sounds to us like it potentially could have been both outside and inside of a building, which might be why we're hearing different things about gunshots. We also know that the FBI is involved in this investigation, along with FDLE. We've seen Florida Highway Patrol there. We've seen Florida Fish and Wildlife there. Of course, this is our state capital, and so all of these agencies are based, a lot of them, in Tallahassee. And so fortunately, we are in a situation where all of those agencies can quickly respond because they are located right there in the capital city.
And here is a map showing the student union, which is where we know first responders first responded to that active shooter call this afternoon. You see Tennessee Street to the north, the very top of this picture, this kind of satellite image, and then Woodward Avenue there along the side. And both of those streets we have seen just lined with law enforcement and ambulances throughout the afternoon here. And when we talked earlier with a photographer for the News Service of Florida showing us some of the crime scene tape surrounding that area, and I wish there were a way I could kind of show you here, but if you look at the main large student union building there, and then to the right of it, just under that inset map, that smaller building, some crime scene tape kind of surrounding that area of grass and sidewalk walking area in between those two buildings. That's where Mike Exline was showing us. You could see that crime scene tape surrounding that area. We also talked earlier with Ryan Cedergren, who is a Florida State student. He talked about being inside the student union at the time, and seeing people running. They kind of hid for a little bit, and then police ending up escorting them, evacuating them out of there. So just to kind of give you an idea of where on campus this all went down, obviously with the caveat of still much we don't know about this situation, still a lot we are learning, still a lot that is unconfirmed at this time, as we are now just 2 hours after the first reports of this, and still trying to nail down some new images. But I want to go back to this live camera from WCTV. It appears they're speaking to another student on the scene. Let's listen in and see if we're able to learn anything from them.
Outside and hearing 5 more shots go off, and I was like, what's going on? So I saw kids running away from the student union, and I walked away from the window. Then I walked back to the window and heard 6, 7 more shots ring out. And at that point, we were like, okay, there's a shooting going on. So we ran from our classroom, went to the offices, locked the doors, barricaded ourselves in there. And then we waited and was looking out the window again and saw the SWAT teams pull up, the police cars, the FBI come. And at that point, we were like, okay, we got to bunker ourselves in. And we were praying. We were like, okay, something's got to change here. And the SWAT team came into the room. They're like, stay where you are, don't move. And we were in there for about 30 minutes. And at that point, we were escorted out. About 100 SWATs were inside the building, and our hands were up. And so then we were escorted outside past the union and then into a safe space.
What was going through your mind when all this was unfolding?
Yeah, I was completely in shock. I didn't think this could happen at Florida State. I mean, we're a pretty safe campus, but yeah, this is just like unheard of to me. I never had been in a school shooting before, active shooter. This is like first time for me, and I was honestly in shock. My hands were shaking. Just adrenaline kicked in, and I really didn't know what to do. I started tearing up. Just like I was scared, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, and so you just saw, you just heard the shots. You didn't see anything.
Yeah, I didn't see the shooter, but I saw the kids running away. I heard some screaming. Yeah, and the shots, like 3 rounds of like 5 shots, and then 7 shots. So it must have been some back and forth going on. Yeah.
Yeah. And how are you doing now?
Good. I've recovered a lot. A lot of people have been texting me. People from out of state, University of Michigan friends have been texting me. People from South Florida have been texting me. People from high school have been texting me. Doing a lot better. It's been a great community that has surrounded me since then. I definitely didn't think I'd be traumatized as much as I have. Definitely not being on the scene, but being kind of away from it. But yeah, it's been scary. So I'm doing a lot better now. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Is there anything that you wish would have happened differently?
Yeah. No, I think the police responded very quickly. I think they did a great job. Yeah, I don't really know what could have happened. Maybe there's more police presence at certain areas for there not to be a shooter. I mean, I think that's just like the most obvious thing, but yeah.
All right. Anything else you want to add? Anything maybe missed?
No, that's great.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. What was your name?
Yeah. I'm Cody.
Cody?
Yes.
Cooper.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
So that witness there, or at least was in the area at the time, described hearing some of the gunshots and seeing people running. He described hearing three rounds of gunfire. One 5 shots, the second one 5 shots, the third one 7 shots. I want to bring in, if I can, Jamie Copenhaver again, who is our former sheriff's detective and investigator. And Jamie, I'm wondering if that tells anything or could indicate anything about what may have happened, or is there anything to be gleaned from that, hearing that witness describe hearing 3 rounds of shots, one being 5, the second one being 5, the third one rather being 7? Is there actually, before I ask you that, let's go ahead and listen in here as they talk to another witness.
First, have you say and spell your name for me, please?
My name is Celeste Halavin, CELESTEHALAVIN.
And you're a student?
Yes.
And what year are you?
I'm a junior.
Junior.
Yeah.
And so, I guess talk about what happened here.
So I was actually on the phone in like the stairwell. I was in the library between like the 4th and 5th floor, and like people started flooding up the stairs, but like nobody told me what happened. So then I started walking back up to the 5th floor. By the time I got there was like these girls, and like it was just chaos. Everyone was like, there's like a shooter and stuff. And so like these guys started like pressing the elevator button to have elevators come up and like put tables in the walkway to like block anyone from getting on the elevator. And then like some other guys like closed the doors to the 5th floor and then put tables and stuff there. But we were all like kind of panicked. I was like freaking out and shaking a lot, but for some reason I just had a peace. And part of that is like because I'm a Christian, and I think Jesus gave me peace in the midst of a chaotic situation. You know, people use free will for whatever they want to do. And so, like, it's very heartbreaking, but I hope that, you know, like, God is brought through this and that people would maybe seek him out through it. But, yeah, I was with actually a few of my friends, Nick and Allison. I was studying for an exam. But yeah, it was chaos. We were standing up there, and then we actually were by the windows. So like at the windows, we saw cops running, students running. It was just like complete chaos. Everyone was like running all over the place. And then we saw like a gurney, and then like the gurney came back, and the guy had his arm cut off, and I think like he was bleeding, and like he had like bandages and stuff. And so like that was really hard to see. Yeah.
I can only imagine what was going through your head when you were kind of realizing that there was a shooting on your campus. I
mean, when I saw everyone flooding up the stairs, I kind of thought that like the shooter was like in the library. I mean, like nobody told me where it was. They said like Landis or like whatever, and I was just in utter disbelief. I was like, you never think that it's gonna be like you and your campus, but you really never know. So it felt surreal. But yeah.
Yeah. How are you doing now?
I'm doing okay. I mean, there's other people who are doing probably a lot worse than me, so I'm just like mourning for those people because I feel really bad. But other than that, like, just waiting to like get my stuff back. My car is in one of the garages that they like locked down. So yeah, I don't have any of my stuff, so I'm just waiting for that.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add? Anything may have missed?
In the midst, okay, I'll look at you.
Yeah.
Okay. In the midst of chaos, like the Creator, God, gives peace under all circumstances, and He seeks to have a relationship with everyone. And so, like, look to Him for the source of questions and answers. So, yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much.
Another witness there on the scene talking about the scary situation. She described being by a window and talking about really the chaos. She said it was chaos. Everyone was running, but she talked about some of the peace that she had as well. And you can only imagine what some of these students are going through right now after a situation like this that is so fraught with emotion and wondering and graphic. The scene she described, some of what she saw, these are things that, I mean, these are young people, and these are things that they are going to carry with them for a long time, perhaps their entire lives.
Yeah, and just, I mean, and Jamie, you can feel free to pipe in as well. I mean, just hearing this young girl, first of all, who has such great faith, and hearing her describe her faith as a young person, that's a beautiful thing. But to hear what she saw, and I think, I don't know if you heard it, but it was quite graphic. She said she saw someone come by, a young man who appeared to have either his arm was either blown off with gunshots. She didn't, obviously she doesn't know. But just horrific to hear that. And we are hearing that there are some really horrific videos that we have been talking about, obviously, that we cannot show because, one, we don't even know if they're accurate portrayal of what happened today. But just to hear that, Jamie, and then to hear the young man before her talk about the gunfire and sort of what he almost described as a rapid gunfire, 5 shots and then a pause and then more shots. What are your thoughts about hearing all of that?
Jamie, I believe you're muted in the Zoom right now. If you can unmute and then give us that from the top.
Yeah, sorry about that. First of all, I mean, just take a moment of silence for these kids and these students and these families. And Amy, we see these, and Garrett, we see these all the time in the news cycle. And I say this every day when I see these. That news cycle goes in and it goes out, but these families are now affected. Legacies are affected forever. And people don't really understand and comprehend that, guys. This is changing family dynamics forever. And these kids to see a war zone, which, it was described as a war zone, and these horrific injuries, our kids shouldn't have to see this.
No, they shouldn't. And it's horrific to think that how often, sadly, this happens. One of the things that the mom that I've been speaking to just told me is she said that they're moving the kids now with their hands up to a different location. She said they are asking them to move with their hands up. Which I guess, Jamie, obviously that is just so that so the officers know that these are kids, right? Just kids that are moving across campus. There's nothing to be concerned about. She said they are now taking them by bus to the Civic Center. The Civic Center, they're in Tallahassee. And she said, I'm praying that this is now over and she'll finally be able to go home. But again, this just goes back to what you were saying, Jamie, earlier about having to secure, as you said, like a small city, which is what, Florida State campus is. It's a large area with a lot of kids.
Yeah, I mean, the hands up, we've seen that in all of these events that we've covered over the years. And, that's a student safety thing. It's a police safety thing. You just don't know, and you cannot second guess that the scene's cleared. So you have to be 100% sure all the time. And, the good thing is these students are now being bused to reunify and to decompress and hopefully to start speaking to some counselors immediately. But, keep in mind, these eye and ear witnesses, they're going to continue to go through this, guys, because they're now going to be interviewed by law enforcement as part of that crime scene. So it's a lot of trauma, 360, if you will. It's a nightmare for these students.
God bless them. Yeah, it's just frightening. Yeah. Jamie, I'm just hearing from my daughter, Kate. She said, yes, the Civic Center, she said, is where they're moving them. She said that is the basketball arena there on campus. And she says she's actually walking over to meet her roommate who has been going from building to building throughout this process. It's just horrifying experience for these kids. Not only the ones who saw something horrific today, but also the ones who have just been on that campus and probably, as you can imagine, scared to death. But yeah, she says we are walking over right now to where they are taking her. And they're going to hopefully be meeting up with her. So at least some of these kids will be able to come home. And we are hearing, yes, now that campus will be closed tomorrow as well, Jamie. And as you mentioned, maybe even to part of next week.
Yeah, I truly believe that. I mean, now that we're hearing bits and pieces coming out on the injuries and the number of shots that were heard. So, I would suggest it's going to be a huge crime scene. It's going to be a great, huge undertaking for law enforcement to go back and kind of rebuild and put the puzzle back together to figure out how this happened. But, I can promise you this. There are investigators right now that are getting search warrants. They're getting data search warrants for devices from the bad guy or the shooter in this case. The question has to be answered. What was the motive for this? So, as we're seeing this play out on live TV, there's certainly in the background investigators working hard behind the scenes to secure search warrants. And, they've got to find a motive for why this occurred too.
Jamie, the other thing, we heard a gentleman earlier, it was a concerned father who was talking about guns on campus, and he was saying he was upset. I think you heard that. He was upset, that they allow these guns on campus. But having been on any college campus, and you know this, it would be impossible to secure an open campus like that in any way, shape, or form. So regardless of what the law says, if somebody wants to do something bad, how do you prevent a person from doing that?
I mean, we've preached this topic before, Amy. It's a soft target. Unfortunately, we're in a climate to where we see these events too often. And, I'm not going to throw out the Second Amendment issue because I don't think it's the time for that. But here's what the time is. Our leaders have to get better, Amy, at hardening up these schools, whether it's metal detectors, whether it's a guard at every door, to protect our kids. And let's set the Second Amendment thing aside. Let's go harden up some of these soft targets and put some funding in this project. And let's try to prevent that shooter from getting onto campus.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this is one of those things where, Jamie, there's just so, again, we can go down the rabbit hole talking about all of those issues. There's so many that go into every single one of these active shooter situations. And unfortunately, we are decades into this, going all the way back to Columbine in the 1990s. And I feel like, we're almost no closer to solving this problem. It's really so sad for every parent, every child who has to experience this. Jamie, again, we are coming up on 2.5 hours now, almost, since that first initial call came out. Still very little information, very little confirmed, other than suspect in custody, 6 injured. And as Garrett was saying, maybe we're getting a little bit more information about the nature of these injuries, but we're not hearing that anyone died, at least from an official source, although some news agencies are reporting that.
Yeah, it's just, we can't speculate. We've got to hear from our officials, which, I mean, we're coming up to where I would anticipate something being said by law enforcement, especially they're now busing these students, Amy, to the Civic Center for potential reunification with family and other students. So I would anticipate something coming up shortly from law enforcement to at least give us an update as to where they're at in the investigation. But more importantly, were they people unalived, and the body count, if you will. And that's going to be the sad part that hits home. If we find out we have students that were unalive today in this horrific attack, and it's just sad, Amy. Gosh, and I'm a dad, you're a mom, and it's just, when is this going to stop? It's got to stop.
It really does. And sadly, I think, Jamie, this is, we send these kids off to college and we hope and pray that they have a beautiful experience. And sadly, these things happen, and it just breaks your heart, because this is not the kind of America we want them to experience. Jamie, I want to go back to, I don't know if you remember this, in 2018, and there was a man with a gun outside of a yoga studio in Tallahassee. Do you remember this? And there were people coming out of the yoga class, and some of them were Florida State students that were killed that day. My daughter is in a sorority there on campus, and they have a memorial to one of the girls who was their sorority sister who was killed that day in 2018. And I think, if my memory serves me correctly, that would have been the last time that Tallahassee saw a mass shooting or something of this magnitude. So going back 7 years. But certainly being in the capital, where you do have all of these, a lot of these agencies, this is where they're based. I assume, right, that FDLE has probably their main offices there. Certainly FWC does. That probably at least gives them a little bit of advantage as far as response and investigation.
No, you're right. I mean, all of our state agencies are based predominantly out of Tallahassee, and you know, fortunately for this case, Tallahassee has an advantage of the more cops available. We've seen a lot of plainclothes detectives carrying long guns. So are those folks assigned at FDLE, the Marshal Service? We just don't know, but they're all centralized in Tallahassee. So I think that's why we saw such a quick police response, because all of these agencies are housed in Tallahassee. So that makes sense.
Jamie, we are showing now some of the video from earlier today, where it was a very active scene. From the live images we took just a few minutes ago, you could see a sheriff's deputy wearing tactical gear and kind of seeming to take that off and get in his car. We still don't know, as we have just been talking about, don't know the status of kind of where things stand right now. Here's another live image where we know still very much an active scene here in Tallahassee. But just kind of walk us through the next few hours. We talked about what investigators would be doing immediately. Obviously, finding and stopping the shooter and taking care of the lives and some of the evidence that they'd be looking for. If you could kind of walk us through the next steps of this, because we've seen some of those mobile crime units, and like you talked about, this is going to be potentially a crime scene for a while. So what is kind of the next steps in an investigation into something like this? As we watch this live picture, we still see a flood of students kind of walking down this walkway here.
Yeah, I mean, they're trying to usher these students out of the immediate area of the crime scene, Garrett, so they can keep and preserve that crime scene. We see an unmarked vehicle. I would assume it's probably a police vehicle blocking off part of the road. That's to prevent any onlookers that would want to come in and look to see what's going on. We call them looky-loos, if you will. So they've got the campus locked down. The next phase is you're going to start rounding up the students that either heard or saw something, and you're going to start interviewing those students and getting statements from those students. While that's happening, the crime scene units are going to go in and start literally processing that crime scene, which is, from what I understand, we've seen, is going to be huge, as you just pointed out, but they're going to start marking shell casings. Unfortunately, they're going to start marking unalived people that possibly may be unalived. We heard the graphic story from that young student that someone's arm may have been severed off. We don't know if that's true. We don't know what she saw, but we know there's a trail of evidence, Garrett, that they're going to have to go back and secure, photograph, tag, and collect that evidence. It's quite an undertaking given what we've seen on the crime scene.
At what point, Jamie, do you think we get some official word from investigators on the scene? Obviously, still a lot going on, a very fluid scene. You see an FHP trooper driving around that barricade right now, kind of entering the campus area where they have that roadblock. So it certainly still seems like there's a lot going on. But at what point do you think we would begin getting some official information from police and law enforcement on scene and on something like this?
Well, we're coming up to the top of the hour at 3 o'clock, so I would certainly, as I said earlier, I would anticipate something being released in a presser around 4 to 5 o'clock. It looks like the crime scene is being secured. We're getting students off campus to where they're secured and safe. So, I would look at the 4 to 5 o'clock hour. We should get some type of official update from the law enforcement community, and at least hopefully get a low injury count and no body count would be the best news. But I would say within the next hour to hour and a half, we should hear something.
I want to show now this this video new into our newsroom that shows, and I haven't seen it, but I want to go ahead and take a look here at what we can see. This was appears to be in the immediate kind of aftermath there, and you can see several students, 3 it looks like, just running across the street there, kind of painting a picture, Amy, of that the panic that ensued that we have heard multiple students kind of talk about as they described what they saw and what they heard after something like this. You can see one of those witnesses described chaos and people running, that they could see it from their window, and this is kind of another vantage point of that. And I'm not sure where this may be taken from, but just this short clip, you can see a little bit more of that. And I'll take you back through some of this this earlier video here. This showing the police vehicles, dozens of them. I mean, I can't even count them. Marked, unmarked. You see the emergency lights on. You hear the sirens in this video as well. And this would have been this afternoon after the initial response, as more and more law enforcement respond to something like this. Let me ask you, Jamie, while we still have you here, seeing this response, we've seen a number of different agencies, local and state. When a call like this goes out on the radio that something like this may be happening, what is that? Just an all hands on deck situation where everyone kind of heads to the scene if you are remotely close, or how does something like that work? Because we saw, like I said, I couldn't even count, just car after car after car of first responders, whether it was marked or unmarked. You could, they had their lights on.
You hit it right on the head. I mean, you're going to have every available unit respond to that university based on the active shooter. But Garrett, let me give you another thought. I'm quite certain we've seen some ununiformed people that were probably off today, that heard the call or heard about the incident, that left from home to respond on their day off. So it's literally all hands on deck. And especially a school. I mean, we all are parents. Most of us are parents, but these men and women, they run into the fire, if you would, while we're running out. So all hands on deck. They want to get there and immediately attack that active shooter, and unfortunately take that shooter out or subdue him.
Jamie, I just received this from my daughter, and my stomach is in knots reading this. But I talked to you a little bit ago about Maura Binkley, and she is the Florida State student who was killed in 2018 outside of that yoga studio. Her dad was supposed to speak today at the student union about gun violence on campus, and I'm in shock of the timing of this and the irony that her dad was supposed to speak today. He was scheduled to talk at 5 o'clock tonight inside of the student union building. He was going to discuss the loss of Maura and how to build. The title of it was "United Against Hate: Building a Safer Campus and Community Together, Maura's Voice Symposium." The irony of this, Jamie, I think lost on no one. The fact that this man is probably in Tallahassee. His daughter was murdered 6 years ago in this city, and he was there to talk about how to stop gun violence, and to know that something like this happened on this very day. It's just shocking.
Amy, I'm speechless. That goes to prove that we have some incredible heroes in our community. I mean, this father lost his daughter, and he's out advocating for stop the violence. And look what happened today. So, I mean, it's a true testament that we can't give up the fight. It's not, I don't want to bring the Second Amendment. It's not the time for that. But we have to do better with hardening up these schools to make it. It's so easy, Amy, to get on these campuses. But this poor man's daughter was unalived in a yoga studio. So
Right, well, a more peaceful place than yoga. I mean, it's just one of those that it's just horrific to think about. But I just can't imagine. And Kate's correcting me. She says, "Mom, it's at the it's called the HCB building, which she says is actually across from the Union. The dad's name is Jeff Binkley. We're going to see if we can get in touch with Jeff and talk to him because I can't even imagine what is going through his mind right now."
I mean, look, I'm trying to stay non-political on this issue, but Amy, I'm going to just say it. And I've never really said this live on your air, but it's time that we as citizens, lawmakers, and all the above, we need to sit down and have a serious conversation, leave the political bantering out of it. And, let's think of our kids, let's think of our families. But Amy, I think it's time we need to have a serious conversation on all the above. And, the left or the right, I don't care if they like it or not. Let's stop this violence.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. We all agree. I mean, we all have that. Everybody agrees on the one fact that nobody wants to see this anymore. So now now we have to figure out how to do it and to save these kids from these horrors because they will carry, sadly. I just keep thinking about this poor girl who had such great faith in the horrific things that she saw today, and she will sadly carry this trauma with her the rest of her life.
Yeah, and that's what I said earlier. I mean, it's not just a news cycle. I mean, these kids and these families, it's legacies of people that are now going to be torn apart because of today. And I would just say, if you're at home, get off the kick of being a left or right. Let's be moms and dads and good stewards of our community. And we've got to employ our leaders to come up with a solution to stop these, Amy. I mean, it's just, it's enough.
Yeah, a little off topic because we're still waiting on any kind of information to come off of campus. But I think you saw Volusia County had a high school, I believe it's Atlantic High School. Sheriff Chitwood said that they implemented metal detectors at the school a couple of weeks ago, and he said so far so good, it's working. And one of the things we often hear is just the the sheer cumbersome, how cumbersome it is to have those metal detectors, and it's difficult. You've got thousands of kids on a high school campus. It's really hard to try to screen all of them. But it's working, and they've made it work. So maybe we're onto something there. But again, that's a high school, Jamie, and you're talking here about a college campus that's open and beautiful and multiple buildings and green spaces, and these are the places where it's just so much harder to try to control it.
And unfortunately, Amy, it may come down to that. I mean, we all fly and we all go through the TSA checkpoints. So we didn't like it at first, but now it's a common thing. We know that when we go to the airport, we're going to stand in line and we're going to go through the magnetometers and we're going to be searched. That's how it is, right? Unfortunately, I don't care about your feelings at this point. I don't care if you like your privacy being invaded by going through a magnetometer. Let's be concerned about these kids and these students. And if it's going to inconvenience you or offend you because, hey, we're going to protect the kids, I'm going to choose the kids, Amy. We need to get these kids safe and secure, and metal detectors will do that.
Yeah.
I briefly here, we just heard from President Trump, who was speaking in the Oval Office, and he was asked about the situation in Tallahassee. And I want to play for you the soundbite as he responded to that question. Here's what he said just moments ago inside the Oval Office, President Trump, on what the latest and what he knows, what he's learning about this situation.
On the Florida State University, Tallahassee active shooting. I guess it's an active shooter. Fully briefed as to where we are right now. It's a shame. It's a horrible thing. Horrible that things like this take place. And we'll have more to say about it later.
So, being briefed about it, still not a whole lot of details at this point. I know Jamie had said before, maybe the 4 o'clock hour, that we could maybe begin expecting to start getting some official information, because it's now been about 2.5 hours since this incident was first reported. Still not a whole lot of details officially. The AP reporting that a suspect is in custody, that at least 6 people were injured. We know Tallahassee Memorial Health has reported that they are treating these victims, saying, let me see if I can find the exact numbers, because they had said earlier that At least one, I believe, was in critical condition. Yes, one person in critical condition, the others in serious condition. That was according to a spokesperson for Tallahassee Memorial Healthcare to the Associated Press. Beyond that, we really don't know much. The first FSU alert coming in just after noon. It was 12:02 p.m. when that alert went out, and on social media, to the phones, the email addresses of Florida State students and others in that community. As Amy talked about earlier, Tallahassee police tweeting out a little bit ago that multiple law enforcement agencies actively working to secure the FSU campus, and talking about the student reunification point being established at the Donald L. Tucker Civic Center. And I'm sure that is a lot of logistics probably go into something like that at this point, as you try to reunify everyone who has been separated, been very quickly told to evacuate, stop what they're doing, leave where they are. We've seen photos on social media of backpacks left on the grass, and notebooks and lunch boxes, just a number of different items just kind of strewn about on the campus there, showing just how quickly that evacuation had to be done, because all of this obviously being an emergency situation, not knowing and just dropping everything to get out of there in a situation like this. And we can show you a couple of our live images here. This one from WTXL, and showing still a heavy law enforcement presence on campus. You still see a large number of students walking down these walkways, and we've said it a number of times, FSU being basically like a city of its own. And so you're talking thousands and hundreds and thousands of students in these areas that have been evacuated, and that it appears are continuing to be evacuated as law enforcement kind of work their way through these areas and clear these buildings and make sure everything and everyone is safe at this point.
Just hearing again from my daughter Kate, who is just off campus. She's in an apartment. They are at the corner of Copeland and Madison. And for those of you who are familiar, Madison is sort of the end where College Town is. It's sort of a newer part of campus. A lot of restaurants and places where the kids like to hang out. Her apartment complex, 2.5 hours after that alert came out, has just sent out a notice asking the kids to shelter in place at the apartment complex, which seems a little odd. I don't know, Jamie. I mean, 2.5 hours later, what does that say to you? An apartment complex, not on campus. It just seems a little strange.
I think it's very strange, Amy. We're seeing kids shuttled on buses to the convention center. We don't see any law enforcement coming into the scene at a rapid response, but we see, in this slide here, we see the cordoned off, the blocking the streets. But that's sort of alarming that they're asking these apartments to shelter in place that aren't directly onto campus. So, is there something more to this that they're not releasing? Which, if I may, Amy, and I believe this will fall my heart, if they were a second shooter or someone of a threat, I think law enforcement would have put that out there to warn people. We've seen that time and time after these incidents where they put out, hey, there's potentially a second person involved, shelter in place.
I'm with you. It just seems odd, unless the apartment complex is just trying to be careful and maybe kind of, sort of what we call the CYA, like, oh, well, we didn't do anything. Oh, okay, well, stay here. But certainly, Jamie, they're not going to stop kids from leaving campus. My daughter was planning to drive home tonight for Easter weekend and be home, this evening. So certainly they're not going to stop people from, leaving town. I can't imagine. So if that's one of those things that it's kind of complicates things, I imagine.
Well, I think if you're the student that didn't see or hear something, yeah, absolutely. But still, they've got to interview these students. And from what I'm seeing and what we're seeing on the screen and what we've heard, a lot of kids heard or saw something. So they still have to interview those students. Right. Unfortunately, they need to interview them sooner than later so they don't forget details. So that's a question to be asked later. I mean, are we going to let all these students go home if they're witnesses, or are they going to have to stay in town to be interviewed?
And
Which
Jamie,
is
another question. If they tell us, all they're saying is suspect in custody, that tells you that that suspect is alive and uninjured, or could that mean anything?
and that's the confusing part of this. We just don't know. That would tell me that he or she's in custody. Um, we've seen these play out where if they unalived that suspect, they're going to report it as such. And the way I understand this, he's in custody, alive and well. That's how I understand that tweet.
We are still working to learn more information and confirm information. We heard unconfirmed reports earlier of multiple shooters. We are now hearing a statement from more statements pouring in from a number of fronts, including lawmakers and now some organizations on the Florida State campus. And I want to caution before we read this statement, because I just want to say again, we don't have confirmed who or how many suspects there may be. We do know that from the AP, they have confirmed that a suspect is in custody. This statement I'm going to read from the Florida State University College Democrats seems to indicate that they believe there were 2 shooters involved. This is their statement saying earlier today, 2 individuals opened fire on the campus of Florida State University, injuring multiple students in a completely preventable act of senseless violence. As authorities continue to release information, College Democrats extends our deepest sympathies to the victims, their families, and every member of the FSU student body, faculty, and the Tallahassee community who has been impacted by today's senseless tragedy. So again, a word of warning, we don't have that confirmed. We are not sure where they may have gotten that information, but that is now an organization from the Florida State campus that is indicating their belief, at least, that there may have been 2 shooters involved with this incident. And if that is the case, Jamie Copenhaver, I guess that could go to explain some of what we have continued to see with these shelter-in-place orders kind of continuing in other places. We talked earlier about the state capitol, certain folks there not being able to leave. Amy was talking about the apartment complex off campus. And so how does that change things then if, Jamie, that is the case and there was or were a second shooter involved in this?
Well, I think it changes it a lot. And here's my thought, Garrett. Coming from an investigative background and a mind, I'm hearing these eyewitnesses and these people that heard shots and et cetera go through the process and give their testimony. We're hearing one suspect may have been taken in alive. But I have to tell you what I really believe in my heart. I heard multiple students tell the statement that they saw the police running or charging towards one of the buildings. They then heard shots inside of a building. The police gave chase, but subsequently, after the police entered the building, they heard a volley of 4 to 8 more shots. So that would sort of suggest they had a potential shootout with a bad guy in that particular part of the building, Garrett, just based on what eyewitnesses are telling us. So maybe that, I don't want to speculate, but I would almost suggest that person possibly was unalived in that area of the school where the police had fired those volley of shots.
We just moments ago got a new tweet from FSU Alert. Let's see if we can pull that up for you here. This is an emergency message for Florida State University Tallahassee campus. Johnny, if you could go ahead and click that link and get us to the main page here that may have that full message, and we can kind of see this is emergency message number 5 there. It says, continue to shelter in place. Law enforcement is actively clearing rooms on the main campus. Law enforcement officers will use, and then it provides a safe word to confirm it is safe to open the door. Continue to shelter in place until law enforcement contacts you. So that also explains the large number of students that we're still seeing walking along campus from some of these live pictures, and it seems like at times, there will be a little bit of a lull. Let me bring up this picture again, where we have really seen, and I don't see too many at this point. Just saw a couple of females walk out of the building and are now walking up the stairs. But we have seen down this walkway, and it looks like some more students coming now. That at times it would appear to be, a classroom full of students or something like that, where you see a large crowd and then not much of anyone for a while. So it sounds like authorities on Florida State's campus are still wanting people to stay where they are, stay sheltered in place, stay locked in those rooms until they come and clear you. I don't know if now we are quarter till 3 o'clock,
almost 3 hours now.
So
yeah,
that this has been going on, and these evacuations, this clearing process is continuing. Something that clearly they are taking their time on, and a serious part of this situation at this point, making sure. I mean, that FSU alert even provided a safe word, basically saying, don't just come out when someone may show up and you hear someone saying, hey, it's okay to come out, which would seem to indicate that, I'm not going to certainly speculate anything, but here's another live image, this from WCTV. You can see a state trooper, and you can see some of the long guns and the gear that these first responders are wearing as they respond to a situation where we are still learning about the full extent of it. But we were talking about those evacuations, those clearings of campus buildings that it sounds like have extended beyond just what was the student union and those buildings in the immediate vicinity.
So we're now starting to, and Jamie, we're getting a little more information. This is coming from, it says per Fox sources. So again, all of this, we have to sort of be very careful with how we report this, but per Fox sources, we are hearing that one of these shooters, the shooter that they're saying is in custody, was shot by police. And one of the things that this Fox sources are talking about specifically is saying that the shooter went into the student union with both a shotgun and a handgun. Which might explain one of the witness statements we heard earlier. There's a young man with a beard, if you remember him, and he talked specifically about he heard 5 shots, and then he heard a pause, and then he heard different shots. And we're hearing that potentially that the shooter, at least the one that we know about, may have used 2 different types of guns in the shooting. We're also told that the shooter is in the hospital in unknown condition. All of this, again, coming per Fox sources. And hearing that a news conference could come as early as 4 o'clock, which is something that Garrett had also mentioned earlier. But again, still conflicting reports, Jamie, about whether there was a second shooter. And we just talk about, we saw the statement from the Florida State Democrats. That would just be highly unusual.
Well, it would be, especially coming from an account that's official, tied to the state or the university. But that being said, I think we would have heard something if they were a continued threat to either the campus or the city of Tallahassee, and we just haven't seen that information come out. So I'm still speculative whether or not that's accurate information. I mean, it just hasn't been confirmed, maybe. But I will tell you this: I was looking at the campus while we were off air. This campus is 487,000 acres. I mean, that's
Wow.
the size of the city. So I think that's why we're seeing this lengthy time period. It's just a long process to clear all of these buildings. It's a huge campus.
And what goes into that, Jamie? We also talked about the safe word that they said. Just kind of walk us through what that process is like for law enforcement as they do go through and I would imagine scour these buildings to make sure there is nothing concerning before they release these students.
I mean, just put yourself in a student's position. You're locked in. In this case, we had a professor leave or abandon those kids, right? He left the classroom, leaving those students to fend for themselves. But just imagine you're in that classroom where your professor ran out. You had the door blocked with chairs and desks and whatever you can find. And you hear this knock or, hey, open the door, or, hey, police, open the door. You just don't know you just don't know. So they develop a safe word. that every student carries on in their mind, that they know heartily that if that safe word is used, it's going to be law enforcement. But it's just, you have to put those procedures into fluid action because of these exact situations we're seeing today.
The other thing that and I don't know if there's a way around it, but they send out that safe word to all of these students, and now other people also now know this safe word.
Yeah.
So even that provides some challenges in itself.
Yeah, I mean, everything we're seeing play out is a challenge, and you can have 4 or 5 different safety valves, if you will, no pun intended, for safe words. But if that system is compromised, or a student tells another student, who tells a friend, who tells a friend, is it really that secure? I mean, it's just as secure as your bank password, right? You're not going to share that, but the school safety word is a little bit less secure and less worrisome than your bank password. But these kids, I can assure you, take that password serious because of the prior incidents that we've seen. So that should be something very sacred to these students to not let leak out, Garrett. I mean, it's helping their own safety should this happen.
That's a good point.
I'm just getting an update from my friend Lisa, a mom that I have been talking to all afternoon, whose daughter was in the student union and was the one barricaded in that classroom that you just talked about, Jamie. And she just sent me a picture, and she is, I don't know if you can see, I'm gonna hold it up, but she is back. There she is, back with Kate. And there's her mom that she's been talking to down here, and there's Mom Lisa. It's the little things, right? That give us like, oh, thank goodness that she's back in a safe place, and that at least that fear is over. But we keep talking about the trauma and what these kids experience, Jamie, and it's hard to even put that into words. So Jamie, okay, so here we are coming up on almost 3 hours since the original alert came out at 12:02. I just feel like we should know more by now. And it's one of those. I guess it's just because that we need to know, and we as parents, and we want to make sure that we have at least are armed with information to feel like the kids are safe. But unusual that we haven't heard more.
I just find it now that we're getting more and more closer to that top of the hour and the 4 o'clock hour, and looking at the size of this campus, over 400. That's huge. 487,000 acres. And we're hearing reports that they're sheltering in place. That tells me these law enforcement officials are going through every single inch of that school to clear it, to make sure we don't have any more shootings or injuries to these kids or to the cops. So I'm a little bit more easy now, knowing the size of this campus. And I think wholeheartedly that's the delay. They just have to be right when they go through to do these searches, and it's taking time.
Yeah. I'm just going to read a little bit more from the alert, and the alert that they put out on Instagram has a little more detail to it. So I'm going to go through that right now. It says here, essential employees should check with supervisors for further reporting instructions. All FSU athletic events in Tallahassee canceled through Sunday. Students who need assistance can go to the Tucker Center, where the university is providing counseling, healthcare, and other support services. Family members are also able to go to the Tucker Center for assistance. I believe, if someone can check that for me, I believe that is the basketball arena or the civic center we talked about. Mm-hmm. The student union and surrounding area is still considered an active crime scene. Individuals should avoid this area. Students should not return to the student union to retrieve personal property at this time. And our producer, Johnny, who is just, we were very early on, was saying, look at this video, Amy, and he was showing me a video of, you could see kids who left laptops and towels. And, it's a beautiful day in Tallahassee. So kids were out on the lawns, and they literally left everything, including their shoes, and ran. So they're saying, don't go back to grab anything. It says students may return to residence halls, but should otherwise stay indoors on the main campus and allow first responders and university staff to do their jobs and respond to those needing assistance. Students may depart campus for the weekend. Classes have been canceled through Friday, and they're asking kids to visit fsu.edu for official updates. So that answers our question about, right, that they're allowing kids to leave if they need to.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's great information. Just imagine, Amy, you're a student on campus and you don't have family. You have other students that you're dorming with or staying with, but you don't have that direct family. If I was a student and this happened and my family was in Orlando, I'm going to be in my car driving to Orlando. I mean, they need that family unit and support. So great. I'm glad they're allowing these kids to leave for the weekend. Much needed.
We're hearing again 4 p.m. a potential news conference expected on this, and we have talked about the absence of kind of confirmed details in this. Let me go ahead and switch cameras here because you've seen a little bit more action on this one. I apologize here. Let me get this one set up. Seeing another as a state trooper there at the corner of Tennessee, and I'm not sure the cross street. I believe earlier they may have been at Woodward, but I'm not exactly sure where this camera is stationed at the moment. But still seeing some action there. To get back to my point, 4 o'clock, that news conference expected. In the meantime, that will have been about 4 hours since this happened. We have talked about the absence of information, confirmed details in this, and that also kind of allows for some of those rumors to spread, and that is something that now in the age of social media can spread so easily on a number of fronts. And so when it comes to an investigation like this and trying to figure out what happened and piece together from a number of different sources and students and witnessed this or heard something or seen something, can that sometimes, Jamie, muddy the waters when it comes to getting statements from people who heard or saw something when they may see rumors flying on social media, and then that kind of could change their perception of what they saw or heard?
Without a question, and that's the evil part of social media. People are they're tweeting or posting stuff. They're not actually there on the scene. They're hearing it from other people, so it must be true, right? And that's going to hamper law enforcement's efforts in terms of determining who's legitimate witnesses and who are not legitimate. And Garrett, perception is crazy. The old adage, close your eyes and I'm going to clap my hands together, open your eyes, and it looks like I've slapped myself in the face. So, to you, it looked like I slapped myself, but in reality, I just clapped my hands. And that's what's going to slow down the investigation, is they have to go through so many students that are potential witnesses. But the good thing is technology's here, so we know what students should have been in that area of the campus, so that they can go back to the class schedule and sort of kind of weed out the people that don't need to be interviewed to get to the main cast of subjects that need to say something.
We are, Jamie, seeing a video that appears to look legitimate. We're not going to show it simply because we haven't sadly vetted it yet to make sure, but we are seeing a video that appears to be legitimate. It's from someone who took it behind sort of a hedge, some hedge of bushes, and across a parking lot. And in the video, you can see what appears to be a male wearing a t-shirt and shorts, firing indiscriminately at people who are walking on a sidewalk outside of one of the Florida State buildings. It does appear to be a real video. It doesn't look like something that somebody made up because it is from far away, and the person who's getting the video, you can see people running and screaming. And it just appears like just somebody just looked like any other student on campus kind of video, and just walking along. And it appears to be a handgun in this video. But again, we talk about, people just in an unsuspecting situation. You're just walking around campus, you're going to class, not a care in the world, probably, AirPods in your ears, maybe not even hearing or even noticing anything strange. And I'm sure that we're probably going to be seeing more of these videos, Jamie, coming out.
Yeah, I mean, so, take a look at what we're learning. We're hearing eye and ear witnesses. We've been on air now for a long time, right? So we've heard multiple witnesses' statements. We've seen a few videos. But now, Amy, you've uncovered this video that shows these horrific graphic scenes. So, as we said here on live on air, we're kind of putting the case together. So now we know it started probably outside of the building, which kind of makes sense now as an investigator. You're hearing eyewitnesses that the bad guy ran in the building with police behind him, and then they heard shots. So, I'm putting together my mind. It started outside. The bad guy ran inside the unit or the building to take cover. Police were there on the spot, gave chase, and that's potentially where this guy could have been shot and stopped by police. So, we're kind of piecing this together. But Amy, imagine all of these students that you had to go back and interview and put a timeline together with this many kids being witnesses. It's just a long tasking, painstaking thing you have to do.
Yeah, I'm trying to think too, Jamie. The last time we had a shooting on campus, in a college campus, Virginia, is the last one that comes to mind. I'm trying to remember. Was it Virginia Tech?
Virginia Tech.
Virginia Tech.
It was
Gosh,
Virginia Tech. Yeah.
yeah, Virginia Tech.
Virginia
It's
Tech.
been a long time since that campus shooting. I'm trying to remember what year it would have even been. I just know it's been a while, and I don't remember how many kids.
2007.
2007. My gosh, we're coming up on almost 20 years since that. It's hard to believe, isn't it? Almost 20 years since the Virginia Tech shooting. And so, are you able to find, Garrett, how many kids were killed in that campus shooting? That was just one shooter, if I remember correctly.
It was 32 were killed on the campus of Virginia Tech in April. It was April 16th of 2007. So,
wow.
I mean, yesterday would have been the 18th
anniversary
of that. 32 people killed in that shooting. That was at 7:15 in the morning inside a campus dormitory where it started. The suspect in that case had multiple guns, lots of ammo, ended up going into a classroom building, chaining and locking the doors there, and then going room to room, shooting people. 32 people dead, more than a dozen injured. In that, it was 27 students and 5 faculty members who died in that shooting in Blacksburg, Virginia.
Wow. Jamie, it's sad. It does sort of make you think, gosh, very close to I hate to call it an anniversary, but very close to the date that happened 18 years ago. You hate to think that there's any connection to that, but my gosh, it's still hard for me to wrap my head around the fact that was 32 people killed that day.
Yeah, and we were talking earlier, Amy, about the news cycle. So that was heavily in the news cycle, the Virginia Tech shooting. And as the news cycle moved on to another topic, we moved on with that, right? But going back to my point earlier, the families that were involved in that shooting at Virginia Tech, they're still affected to this day, and we just kind of forget about the families. And whether you know these folks or not, pray for them, pray for the families, and pray for our investigators so they can figure out why this crazy madman did what he did today.
And we are continuing to look at live images. You can still see emergency lights of these police and first responders who are on the scene on this campus of Florida State University in Tallahassee. We've seen students continuing to leave, appearing to be evacuated. You see, if you look right on the top of that berm, that little hill there, you can see a small FSU logo. That is a bus. We know that students have been bused to the Civic Center, which is the reunification point, as investigators, police, first responders continue to clear this scene and investigate. Still not a whole lot of details, but we know one of the news organizations working to track down the latest on this is the News Service of Florida. We spoke earlier with Mike Exline, a photographer on the scene of the campus there, and joining us live now via Zoom is assignment manager Tom Urban. And Tom, we appreciate you joining us this afternoon here on Fox 35 News Plus.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Tom, so if you could just kind of walk us through the afternoon there in Tallahassee and what you've been hearing.
Probably we've been hearing the same as a lot of what you've been hearing, but at least 6 people have been, injured, taken to the hospital here in Tallahassee Memorial Hospital, the main hospital here on campus. That's campus, is pretty well shut down. There's just a bunch of kids and teachers and parents and everybody just kind of not knowing what to do over there. That's kind of the current status right now. It's been a pretty chaotic afternoon.
Tom, I'm curious if you heard the original call go out across the scanner.
I didn't hear it across the scanner. I get the FSU alerts to my phone, the same as a lot of people that are on campus do. That was right around noon that first came out. that's kind of how we found out about it.
And so you have talk us through who you have out covering this story at this point in the afternoon.
Right now, we've got our crew. Mostly we're in the middle of the legislative session, so most of the people
Yeah.
here were up at the Capitol at the time, and but we have one of our Capitol print reporters who was there. One of our videographers, he was there. I was there for a little bit earlier before coming back to the office to try and do the initial editing of the story. But that's who's they're actually right now at the staging area for the media for the news conference that's going to be happening in the next half hour or so.
So what do you know about that news conference? We've been trying to nail down some details about that ourselves. So what do we know about when and where that's going to be happening?
What we know, again, everything's tentative, relatively speaking, today, just because of what's going on. But it should be around 4 o'clock at the. It's called the Turnbull Center at FSU. It's where they oftentimes have their board meetings. The FSU Board of Trustees. A lot of those events. It's towards the edge of campus, also near the Civic Center, which is, I know, where the reunification point is for parents.
In the absence of that, you, like us, I know, have been trying to gather details on this, and it certainly can prove challenging in developing situations where there is not a whole lot of information and official details coming out, and obviously, certainly understanding of it still being very active. But just kind of talk through the challenge there of trying to nail down some of the details of what's been happening.
Well, with such a presence of students as well as police, everybody says everybody's got a little bit different information, and you never know which of it is the actual accurate information. There's some students, and it's no fault of their own, but some people are saying they hear 5 or 10 shots. Somebody else says 30. It's just tough to gauge that. And the law enforcement you're talking to on the street corner probably might know as much as you do in that exact moment when they're working on traffic control and crowd control. So it's just been difficult. I think we're all looking forward to this 4 o'clock event.
So Tom, you're based out of Tallahassee. Just talk us through the role that FSU plays in the community. We know it's a large university there, and a lot of students on campus, and I would imagine a big part of the area.
Well, Tallahassee is a uniquely located place in Florida. It's up here on the edge of the Panhandle, far flung from most of the big cities like Orlando and Tampa and Miami. But the drivers of the economy and the heartbeat of this town is Florida State, Florida A&M, and the state capitol. Those those 3 entities are the reason that this town is here, the reason I have my job, the reason that any things happen in this town. And I mean, you can't be in Tallahassee without having FSU impact on you one way or another, regardless of what you're doing.
And so, Tom, we had the chance to speak earlier with Mike Exline, one of your photographers who was on the scene there, and he was showing us a long line of witnesses who police had asked to speak with and to hear what they may have heard and what they may have seen. I'm curious if you've had any more contact with your folks on campus, and if things have changed, if they're still kind of going through that process, and what we know about what's happening.
From what I can tell, some people that were in that initial situation, a lot of them are going to the. Many of them are going. What I've been told by them is, some of them are going to the Civic Center. Others are, if they've talked to their parents or loved ones, they might just be leaving campus. I know that our crew is going to that staging area for the media for the 4 o'clock briefing. That's where they're going now. So the stuff that would be immediately near the the campus center where this was happening, I don't believe that they're there right now.
Okay. Still very much an active scene,
Yes.
Still trying to nail down some of those details. The latest alert from FSU continuing to urge folks to shelter in place, so we're continuing to kind of monitor that as well as we wait for that 4 o'clock news conference. Well, Tom Urban, assignment manager with the News Service of Florida, we appreciate your time this afternoon. I know it's been a busy afternoon for you and your crews as well, so we appreciate you taking the time here with us on Fox 35 News Plus.
Absolutely.
I give you another live look right now from WTXL, and this is, you can see, let me see here if I can figure out where exactly this camera is. It looks like it's near an Earth and Atmospheric Sciences building on FSU's campus, trying to just figure out the layout, that Earth, Ocean, and Atmospheric Science on Academic Way. And so we are looking at a slightly different angle from the other camera, which is positioned on Tennessee Street, but still not far from the Student Union, where it appears, and from what we have heard, that active shooting call first came in. And so we have seen a number of students evacuating, boarding buses. It looks like we talked about the FSU, the bus with the FSU logo. You can still see it behind those trees. It looks like another bus has pulled in behind it, which seems to indicate there's still more buildings and classrooms to evacuate, as we know from the FSU alert that just came down in the last little bit, that they are continuing to do this afternoon. And joining me live in the studio here now is Fox 35 news anchor John Brown. And John, we appreciate you joining us. Still a lot we don't know about this situation, but a lot that we do know that it is a sad day and a tragic day on this campus in Tallahassee.
And I think that's the things that we don't know, I think, are the things that everybody wants to know at this point. And I know you said it's 4 o'clock. They're planning on having a press briefing up there. But again, so many different reports. As I scroll through social media, you can see how these stories get out of control, because so much what appears to be, well, we don't know if it's erroneous or not, but so many differing reports on social media right now, it's hard to know what to believe. So just keep that in mind. But one thing that I do find interesting is I heard somebody talking on the way in on the radio is about this whole parental reunification with the students. And I know Amy was in here. She has a daughter up there. One, they made the point that this is an entire generation that has grown up with these kind of drills. You know, previous generations like mine, you had a fire drill, tornado drill, and that was it. This entire generation has grown up with this. And so I think that's what's so shocking is so many people have been interviewed on TV at different networks today saying, you know, went through high school, went through all the, nothing happened. I never thought it would happen here. That's a common thing that we hear so many times is everybody feels comfortable where they are. And then you always hear those stories, I never thought it would happen here. Yes, Gary.
We have, it looks like our camera from WTXL, they're talking to someone here on the campus. So let's go ahead and listen in to see what they're saying.
They're shooting. And in that moment, I, of course, gathered myself and then alerted all of my staff, got them to a place where they were safe, and ensured that I let my supervisors know that something was happening in the building. And so, you know, you don't expect these types of things. Certainly, it was pretty close to lunchtime, so typically a lot of my staff would have already left for lunch, maybe even been out walking. So we're thankful that everyone is safe. We got out of the building safe. The law enforcement officials took great care to make sure the building was safe and secure, and we all got out safe and secure.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that she was telling me was that she couldn't exactly see what was going on, but she could hear it. Can you describe what that sounded like?
It just sounded like really loud bangs. When we were alerted that it sounded like there could have been an active shooter on campus, and so we could just hear the banging noise, loud bangs from where we were. Like I said, this is a time of the year where it's a really celebratory time. Students are looking forward to ending the school year, academic year rather. They're looking forward to graduation. And so not expecting this type of interruption in the day was somewhat shocking. It really was.
Absolutely, something that's going to leave a mark on the community for quite some time. I know that you said that, I want to divert into what you were saying. What were you feeling when you heard that sound? What was the first thought?
Well, I guess because, I'm in a position where I oversee a group of people. My first thought was my staff. Where's my staff? How's everyone doing? And getting them to a place of safety. That was my thought in that moment. As soon as I became aware that, yes, this is something serious, this isn't someone just, playing around, I took what I heard to be shots as something serious. And my first thought was to alert everyone around me to get to a place of safety. And so that's what we did, make sure all of our staff around us was safe.
And one of the things we're talking about is that, you come to work. Did you expect anything like this could ever happen?
Absolutely not. Of course, you hear about these things in the news, in the media, but never expect it to happen so close to you. And so, having this happen today, it certainly helps put in perspective how precious life is and how we don't take things for granted. So I'm really grateful to how everyone responded today, how the law enforcement officials, a quick response, because as soon as we heard shooting, there were law enforcement all around us. And so just seeing FSU rise to the occasion in the way that we know FSU can do. Everyone was strong. I saw resilience. I saw calm in that time of what could be chaos, but everything seemed to be organized in the way that it was handled as best as it could be in this a really active moment. So
yeah. And another thing, you told me that you're not able to get to your car. So what's kind of next for you?
Well, my daughter's birthday is this weekend, and I was planning on traveling to where she is out of town to help celebrate her birthday, which it still will happen. That's just we are certainly thoughtful in our prayers of anyone and everyone who's been affected by this, but just really truly grateful for those that I have around me, my family, my friends. I'm all safe, just to be able to give hugs and just show how much I love them. Same to my staff, just so much love, and the FSU community and everyone around in Tallahassee, everyone that's affected. I thought my sincere thoughts are with everyone on campus today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tanya, for giving that experience.
Absolutely.
I know that was tough, but we appreciate your insight from the incident. This is what it's looking like here. A lot of people telling me that they're just thankful that, their loved ones are safe. They are keeping those who were hurt in mind. They're worried about, just trying to get away from the situation, trying to find safety, making sure their loved ones have a way to get out as well. That's the current situation. We'll keep looking at things here, but Jade.
So it appeared to be a faculty member of some sort from Florida State speaking there with that reporter from WTXL. Breaking news here on Fox 35 News Plus. Tallahassee police tweeting out just 2 minutes ago that the Florida State campus has been secured. Multiple law enforcement agencies remain on site for the ongoing investigation. The student union and surrounding area are still considered an active crime scene. Individuals should not return to the area for any reason. They go on to talk about busing underway to help students reach that reunification point at the Donald L. Tucker Civic Center. They say a briefing tentatively set. They're now saying for 4:30 p.m., which will air live on the Tallahassee Police Facebook page. Of course, we will bring that to you live here on Fox Local as well. We also have a new Florida State alert, I believe, as well, that you had pulled up just a minute ago, Johnny, that had a little more details as well. They say law enforcement has neutralized the threat. Please avoid the Student Union, Bellamy, HCB Classroom Building, Rivetta A and B, Moore Auditorium, Shaw, Pepper, Hecht House, and Caraway, as they are still considered an active crime scene. Let's go ahead and click on this and see if we can see the rest of those details there, saying individuals are free to move about other areas of campus. So now, John, getting a better idea of the scope of this crime scene on Florida State's campus as well, even as the threat has been neutralized, according to Florida State. But let's go ahead and bring in Jamie Copenhaver again too, because when you
Yeah.
hear that language neutralized, that seems to indicate something, or at least have certain connotations.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this is something we've been speculating about for the last 2 hours. Was the suspect taken into custody alive or not alive? So, we're now hearing officially that he was unalived and neutralized. So that tells me that they stopped the threat by unaliving this individual. That's how I define that. JB, what do you think?
Well, I don't know. I'll be honest, because I'm seeing some videos of them arresting somebody, but you never know. And Jamie, I know we've talked about this in the past, is that if you have, for example, a school shooting in a high school, elementary school, you have a small field to contain. When it comes to a college campus, you're talking about sometimes hundreds of acres, people coming and going. I mean, this is no ordinary task here, James, because it gets exponentially bigger, because trying to find all the evidence from where this person may have parked or where they walked from to where the shooting happened. I mean, this is, and with finals, 10 days away up there? I mean, this campus is going to be in shock for a long time, actually.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about it earlier before you came on air with us, John, that it's that campus is 487,000 acres.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, that's huge. So yeah, I mean, they have to figure out, number one, did he park? Did he drive? Did someone drop him off? They have to secure that part of the scene, and then obviously try to trace his steps backwards to figure out, okay, were they evidence that we missed here? They just can't miss evidence. Whether he's alive or not, it's still an active crime scene, and it's just painstaking to go through that, which is why, we were speculating this is why these students, some of them are still being held in place, so they're not out contaminating potential evidence that would be trampled on.
Yeah, and that's the other part of it. I mean, they're still college students. And James, that's one thing that I find interesting in this case too, is when you're talking about school shootings with high schools, whatever, middle schools, parents all flock to the scene, and they're young children. They need their parents. These college students are kind of in between. I mean, a lot of them are still very, very immature. And I don't mean that in a negative connotation at all. I mean, like, my daughter still needs dad and mom, right? But you don't have them there. And then you have some older students. So that's also a dynamic here that I know psychologists have a hard time dealing with, because how do you take care of your children when they're hundreds, if not thousands of miles away? They need you. And then you don't know how bad they need you. Or other kids don't need mom and dad at all right now. So, I mean, that's a complicating factor here in the aftermath of this, James.
We just seen it play out on live TV. Amy was in the middle of texting her daughter in Trenton. So,
yeah,
she's a mom. She's sitting there she doesn't know what's going on. She wants the information. So she's loving her child from afar, but rest assured, Amy wants that child in her arms to comfort her. So, there are kids, John. There are kids. And whether you're in high school or college, you're still a kid. You're going to be a kid forever to parents. And, just God bless these kids and hope they get home quickly today, so they're back with their family and safe, and start getting, John, the psychology part of this. Some of the stories we've heard from these witnesses are just horrific. So, you can't unsee that stuff.
And I don't know how you go for finals in 10 days on a campus like this. Because, I mean, it's a big campus, but everybody I know who's gone up there, it's a small town. I mean, it's just one of those, like, UCF's a big campus in a big town. You don't know. FSU seems like one of those places, and FAMU and all the others there, where it's just tight. I mean, it's a tight group because the town is tight. So, hey, James, another thing here that kind of stands out to me is, and I don't have, I know people think that, from a political standpoint, and I hate to get into this, but just a couple blocks away is the Capitol. They're debating rolling back some gun regulations that came in place after Parkland. And I don't really have a point with that, just the juxtaposition of the lawmakers debating this and a few blocks away dealing with that. There are a lot of strong emotions in Tallahassee on both sides right now, to say the least.
I was just looking at X and some of the posting from our leaders and political I mean, it's just on fire right now. And John, maybe it's rightfully so. We were talking about it earlier. We need enough's enough. We have to pray for these folks that are involved. But John, I'm coming from a 30-year career in law enforcement. I'm a Second Amendment guy, and I'm telling you right now, we need something changed to protect our kids. And I don't know what that something is, but we have soft targets like we've seen today. we need to have more metal detectors. And I think we need to take a look. Do we really need these weapons and guns on campus? And, you know, I don't really care about your rights when it becomes killing our kids, John. We can't have that. It's got to stop.
You know, and James, that's one of those issues here where I debate people, not on the gun portion of it necessarily, but on a security standpoint, is when a shooting in a mall happens, well, do we need police at every mall entrance? When a shooting on a campus here, do we need to lock down the campuses? Then you ask yourself, is that the kind of world that we want to live in? And I think most people would say, no, I don't want to go. You know, it's an annoyance when you go to a football game or something, you got to go through all that. But that brings us to where we are today. So like you said, what needs to be done, I'm not sure, but I don't think we want to live in a world where it's everywhere. I mean, it looks like the old Soviet Union where everything was on lockdown all the time and you had to go through security everywhere you went.
John, you hit it right on the head. You and I spoke about this 10 years ago on the air. One of these active shooters that ended up being exactly what we're seeing playing out. And we're like, you know, do we really want to go there? Do we want to see everything locked down? Do we want to see our schools cordoned off with prison fences and magnetometers? So that was 10, 15 years ago. We're still here. We're still behind the ball. I don't know. We're going to have to do something different. And maybe we're at that point now to where we need to start upping our game in terms of security. We know the Second Amendment probably isn't going away. So we're going to have to harden up some of these soft targets. And it's probably going to inconvenience a lot of people. But I tell you what, I would much rather be inconvenienced at one of my campuses in the state or the U.S. than see what we see today. And I think it comes down to a little heavier hand on security and implementing we've got to have metal detectors in these campuses, both high school and college.
You know, James, I know another thing you and I had talked about a long time ago, and because my kids were younger, the last time you and I were on the air for one of these, is I hate the fact that I have to scare the hell out of my kids to be aware, right? That's where we are now.
Yeah.
That I have to tell them whether it's pedophiles, it's what you have to sit down with a precious 6 or 7 year old and tell them, well, here's why Dad always sits facing the front door of a restaurant, right? I mean, that's a weird conversation to have with a kid that my parents never had to have with me, but now I have to tell them, no, because I want to see if something's happening. You may have been the one who told me that. I always sit facing the door to see if something's going to happen. So one, you protect the family, and then you take action. I mean, that's the conversation you have to have with kids these days, and that's kind of sad.
When you joined us live on the air here just a few minutes ago, you were pointing out that during our time, we had tornado drills and drills and all of this, but now these kids are doing lockdown drills. But this is what really makes my heart happy. We had a professor in this case that ran out of the classroom. We don't know why, but he left these students in there by themselves. But John, they are trained and they're heads up enough with this, always in your face with these events, that they started blocking the doors with chairs and desks and what have you. So they automatically knew, and that kicked in to self-preserve, lock the door, block it off, and shelter in place. So, gosh, we all hate to see this, but we're here.
Yeah, and so again, it looks like now that press briefing, right, 4:30, is that what we're hearing, Garrett? They pushed it back about a half an hour?
Yes, correct.
And that's another thing, James. I know people watching on a format like this are also probably scrolling social media at the time. And like you heard me say when we came on, I mean, there is so much, it's got to be erroneous information because nothing matches. So just, don't share what some random person puts out there, because I saw some number some random guy put out, and I checked on him, and he was in the UK. I'm like, okay, you have no idea what you're even talking about. You're hearing from somebody, and I think that's how these stories spread even further. But again, very quickly, James, that's a great point, because I got the text from my daughter. Like, the kids these days find out way before us adults because they're so connected with different friends at different campuses. She knew a couple minutes after it, and she's letting me know about it. So, I guess in social media, it is good in some ways, but know that there's so much junk out there too.
Just be mindful. I mean, we all love to get, we like to banter on social media, right? We like the little drama and the arguing, but, rest assured, John, there's consequences to these erroneous, false, fake tweets and posts that are people putting out. There's families that are, they're gripping for new news. See this on social media, just like Amy. I mean, God forbid, we've got to be more responsible in what we put out there.
I want to pull up a map now because from that, the new alert from Florida State, we were able to get a decent idea of the kind of epicenter of this investigation, the buildings that are involved in this crime scene. You heard them talk about it still being very much an active crime scene in these areas. So I want to go ahead and pull up this map here. Where you can see, and this is a campus map from Florida State University's website, and so those numbers correspond with different buildings, and I've been jotting down the numbers of the buildings because, like I said, there are other people who are much more familiar with this campus than I am, but if you look at 4018 that you see slightly to the right of your screen there, that is the student union where this situation really kind of seemed to begin, where that active shooter call began, according to the initial FSU alert that came in at 12:02. So we are looking at 3.5 hours ago now. That building is still part of the crime scene. If you look to the very bottom there, you see the very tip top of 4009. That is the HCB building, a classroom building. There, 195 as well. That is the small building that when we were speaking with Mike Exline, the photographer from the News Service of Florida, he was showing us the vantage point to the north, from the north of there, looking back at that area, showing us the crime scene tape that we could see wrapped in between the student union and the Moore building, which is the building you see there at 195. So we knew that was a part of the crime scene, potentially part of that initial crime scene, if what some of those reports we are hearing are indeed accurate. And so the Moore building, HCB, the classroom building, the student union that you see as well. If you look to the right, you see the number 52. There's also another number beside it that you can't see. That's 23. That's the Rivetta building. That is also part of the active crime scene, according to Florida State and Tallahassee police. And then if you go to the other side of Woodward Avenue, so where you see the parking garage there, 113, that is Caraway. 4010, that is, let's see, Bellamy. I'm looking for Bellamy. I don't believe you see it on the map here right now, but a couple of other buildings as well. So just to kind of give you an idea, a good chunk of that area from the student union, the surrounding streets as well, the Hecht House, all of these buildings, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of them are all part of this active crime scene where investigators and police are asking folks to avoid, including some. Johnny, I'm going to ask you to move that over to the right, so to the east a little bit on the map so that we can see a little bit more to the east if we can, just to show the scope even further, because a couple of those buildings that we can't see, okay, that's good enough. And then if you can scroll down a little bit and show us a little farther to the south. Okay, there we go. Now you're seeing more of 4009. That building 8, that is Bellamy. That is also part of the crime scene as well. So it is a fairly large part of this campus, at least the central part there, surrounding that student union that folks or the investigators are asking folks to avoid right now because they are considering it part of this active crime scene. And Jamie, I want to ask you. I guess that would explain the long process of clearing these buildings and evacuating these students, because that's close to a dozen different buildings and large buildings at that. In the middle of the day on a Thursday, the week before the final day of classes coming up on April 25th. So certainly a lot going on and a lot of students to go through and clear out of these classroom and other buildings.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's been appropriate. We haven't been speculating as to why it's taking so long, but, as we watch this play out, we're literally watching this case come together, and they're building the case, and they're starting to put the timeline together as we see these different buildings marked off as crime scenes. And this it's an amazing view of all these buildings that were potentially affected by either someone injured or the shooter himself. And the curiosity will be, why are they designated crime scenes? How were these buildings related to this horrific incident we see today? So, could it have been an injured person running into that building, and that's where they possibly sat down or collapsed? That made that part of a crime scene. We just don't know, but it's a huge crime scene that answers a lot of questions.
And so when you have a crime scene that large, we already talked about some of the challenges of an investigation like this. Now that we know the scope of that, what does that mean for investigators trying to piece this together? So we've talked about a lot of the different aspects of an investigation like this, working through the eyewitness accounts, trying to find, scouring social media, all of those different things. But now that we know kind of the scope of this crime scene, and again, like you said, we don't know the extent of these different locations in involvement and what all may have happened in these different buildings, but we do know they are part of the crime scene, and so that means that's part of the investigation somehow. And so what does that mean then for police?
Yeah, so this is how you're going to approach that, John or Garrett. You're going to have multiple teams, and those teams are going to be split up. One team is going to be responsible for witnesses. One team could be responsible for ear witnesses to put those people together on statements if needed. And then you're going to have a evidence collection team, if you will. And then you're going to have what I would suggest, and for layman's terms, scouts, which are law enforcement officials going out and scouting and looking for any evidence that may pertain to this case that may have not been located yet, right? So it's a multiple team situation, everyone working towards the same goal, which is clearing the scene, collecting the evidence, and then obviously making sure nothing was left behind. But here's the painstaking part of this. They're going to have to go back after this and kind of rebuild the puzzle. We still don't know a motive. So there's a separate team that's working in a data collection center, if you will, getting search warrants for devices and what have you of the bad guy to try to come up with a motive. And more importantly, where was he at yesterday and earlier before the shooting?
Yeah, let's go into that a little bit, because trying to figure out why something like this may have happened. And again, we know nothing about the suspect, and just to come back to one point, we had heard earlier about the potential of two shooters in this. Tallahassee police, in their tweet talking about the threat being neutralized, seem to make no indication of that, unless they're using threat as just a general overarching term instead of shooter or shooters, threat being potentially referring to two, but there's really no indication of that one way or another. Either way, we know nothing about a suspect in this, who may have done this, why they may have done this. So what now goes into trying to figure out, now that the campus is secure, when does that start? Trying to figure out why someone may have done whatever happened on the campus of Florida State University today.
Yeah, I want to suggest that process has already started. They've assigned a team or unit, if you will, that are going to go out and dig in social media. They're going to get a warrant or a search warrant for any devices that he had on his person. More importantly, they're going to go out and secure a search warrant for his residence or wherever he was staying, and also a car or a vehicle that he may have traveled in. So, I can assure you they're a team with probably a state attorney currently working on that exact topic to help law enforcement uncover the motive. But, I want to point out something else, Garrett. We see these all the time, unfortunately, and inadvertently, most of these cases you're going to see and hear later on, well, he had posted on this social media platform, he had posted on this. So he may have even posted something that they could have went out and collected already and shut down that account after they collected it. We just don't know, but we've certainly seen that in the past.
How challenging is that? And I know there are some times where it is a while before we, the public, may ever find out what a motive is. How difficult is that for police to try to nail down in situations like this? Is it difficult? Is it time consuming? Does it? How long could something like that take? I mean, I guess it would depend on how much planning or what all the presence of this person may have been. But what challenges does that pose?
For instance, the weapon or weapons that we're hearing that may have been used in this. So, I can assure you that whoever's in charge of that crime scene has already taken those serial numbers, if they were serial numbers on the weapons, and ATF is probably on the scene already, and they're going to start retracing the steps of that weapon or weapons to find out who owned them. That would be a very first step on that aspect of it. In unison, you're going to have a section or a group of investigators writing and authoring search warrants that we'd covered earlier for devices and any electronic devices, so they could break into those devices and hopefully learn the motive. So to answer your question, it's time consuming. But we've also seen in history that some of these motives are uncovered almost immediately because the bad guy usually posted it on some type of social media platform. So it just depends on a case by case basis. But that doesn't negate that there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes in the paperwork part of this that we're not seeing or hearing about.
Hoping to get some initial details at 4:30. We have talked about the absence of official information at this point. What do you think are some of those initial facts that we may get at 4:30? That would be about 4.5 hours after this happened. If the threat is indeed neutralized, if it is just the single shooter who has been neutralized, how much information might we get, and what things may police try to keep at this point, keep hidden or keep secret, so as not to hinder the next steps in this? What can we expect to hear?
Yeah, I think immediately we're going to hear the situation of the suspect. Is the suspect alive or not alive? I think we're going to hear that immediately from law enforcement. But more importantly, we're going to hear that the community's safe, and it's safe to carry on about your normal routine, as normal as it can be, other than the Florida State campus. So I think those would be the top two headlines. And then I would, the painstaking part that we're going to have to listen to, and is going to be a potential victim count, whether alive or unalived. Unfortunately, we're going to probably hear that, and of course the normal stuff. They're going to be working very, very hard to put the timeline together. We'll probably hear a little bit about that. So many agencies that we've seen on scene. I would look for a state attorney to be probably at that press conference, who's probably giving the legal advice and making sure that all this is done properly with the I's dotted and the T's crossed. So, but I would think the condition of the suspect or the shooter would be first, and then we're going to hear, unfortunately, the victims and potential victim body counts.
This is a live look from WCTV. You can see the Tennessee Street sign there, and I have not been able to nail down the cross street of where this camera exactly is. We do know that they are kind of right on the edge. You see the barricades there. You see a state trooper, Leon County ambulance as well. This is a scene that we have seen throughout the day be very active. You see one vehicle going past there, and still some folks coming in to campus. That appears to be an unmarked vehicle there with emergency lights on, just going past. So still a lot of activity this afternoon, even as we get the word that campus is secure. I'm going to go ahead and let's see, not much happening on that other angle, so we'll keep it here for a minute. We know that on the other side, in fact, let me bring up this from WTXL. You can see state troopers as well on that overpass, or I believe it's actually an underpass. They're on the top of the underpass. You see someone in a bulletproof vest walking down. This is where we have seen a lot of these evacuations taking place. And floods of students walking over that bridge to get to the buses that we know are taking these students to the Civic Center for reunification. Unclear what the operations there are looking like, how many people might be there, but we kind of showed just a little bit ago, and we got an idea of the scope of the buildings that had been evacuated, and that kind of explained for us why this was such a painstaking process. But still, when you see a lot of this activity, you still see emergency lights, police officers, investigators milling around and walking around, still their emergency lights on, shows that there is still quite a bit of activity going on in these areas, even on this kind of edge of the street here, which is not considered part of the active crime scene as we understand it from Tallahassee police. We can show some of the video from earlier as well, just to show the scene throughout the day here. This is from WCTV down looking down Woodward Avenue, and you can see just the dozens of law enforcement vehicles. This was just a couple of hours ago, and dozens, beyond count, from multiple different agencies. We know the Tallahassee police, it appears, I would say, that at this point Tallahassee police has kind of been the lead on this, because they have been tweeting the most information about it. They talked about the news conference that's coming at 4:30, and James, I'll get your take on that in a minute. But FWC we have seen on scene. We know the FBI at least was en route, or at this point I believe they are also on the scene. So we are talking local, we're talking state, we're talking federal agencies, all part of this, and trying to get to the bottom of what happened. And I'm wondering if in a case like this, having all of that can be helpful, or if in getting to the bottom of this, or if that coordination has some challenges. But I would imagine having that many boots on the ground and being in Tallahassee, where we know is the seat of government for the great state of Florida, with the Attorney General talking about being briefed on this and everything like that, I would imagine that would also have some advantages. James, let me get your take on that.
Okay, I lost you for a moment. No, you're 100% right, Garrett. You're going to see somewhere in those videos, you're going to see a command center, or they've set up a command center at one of the buildings where all of these agencies are going to have a representative that's going to go into that command center, so they can obviously communicate and get every one of these local, state, and federal officers on the same sheet. So they're going to assign teams, they're going to assign different tasks for each team. So you're going to see a huge whiteboard, if you will, and everything's going to be unified out of one command center. And it's almost like a sympathy. I mean, you're going to have a director, and then you're going to have composers, and then you're going to have the actual boots on the ground, which we're seeing out here, whether it's directing traffic, getting kids onto school buses, or clearing buildings. So it's a very well-ran machine. It looks chaotic, but it's well-ran and it's organized.
I want to bring in Fox 35's Marlisa Goldsmith, who joins me live now here in our streaming studio. And Marlisa, we appreciate you joining us. Certainly a sad day today as we continue to learn more about what happened in Tallahassee. Still waiting on some more official word, but we have from sources, a number of sources, been able to kind of piece together some of a little bit of a picture of what happened on campus.
Yeah, a little bit of a picture. And I just want to make note, we've been keeping a close eye on the clock here. We are about 40 minutes or so away from a press conference happening. We're expecting to learn more details of what happened today with regard to who was involved, the suspect who has been taken into custody. So to kind of do a reset for those of you who have just joined us here on Fox Local, FSU, they issued an active shooting alert around 12 p.m. this afternoon about a reported active shooter near the student union on campus there. There have been at least 6 people confirmed to be hurt, according to the Associated Press. And they were gathering that information from the Tallahassee Memorial Healthcare System there. 1 person has been listed in critical condition. 5 others of those 6 are reported to be in serious condition. Now, as for the suspect, again, we're working with very limited details here. We are expecting to learn more, hopefully, out of this press conference that's scheduled to start at last check at 4:30 this afternoon, so about 39 minutes away from that, give or take. The suspect, though, is confirmed to be in custody there. We're waiting to learn if this person was a student, the age of that person, more information about them. Again, that alert went out at 12 p.m. The campus immediately went into lockdown there. You all know that this university is huge. I mean, multiple students go to this university. We have coworkers who have, children that go to that university, a lot of people across Central Florida that attend this school. So as soon as we saw the alert, I mean, my heart just sank because I started thinking about all the people that I know with kids there and how many people go to this school. But again, that one person has been taken into custody. There were multiple weapons reportedly found after this shooting was reported. But as of right now, we just know of the one suspect that has been taken into custody. I know, Garrett, a short time ago, you pulled up an alert from the FSU alert account on their website, and this was posted about 3:20 this afternoon, so about a half hour ago. And it said, law enforcement has neutralized the threat. Please avoid the student union, Bellamy HCB classroom building. They went through a list of places that they're asking students and parents and faculty to avoid at this time because they are still considering this an active crime scene. They did assure people there that individuals are free to move about other areas of the campus, but if you happen to have seen something, then you should call the number that is listed there. And Garrett, you've just pulled up a timeline of this. I'm glad that you have this to kind of give a better breakdown there of how this all played out throughout the afternoon.
Yeah, and here we are at 3:52, close to 4 p.m. 4:30 is when Tallahassee police were expecting to hear from them. We have been on the air now, or on streaming now, for about 3 hours, and been kind of learning as we go along with all of you what has kind of happened. 3:18 p.m., so about half an hour ago now, learning that the threat has been neutralized. Again, there have been differing reports, whether this was one shooter, two shooters, and as we talked about with Jamie just a few minutes ago, that word threat doesn't necessarily indicate one way or the other, but hoping for new details on that shortly. Joining us live now via Zoom is State Representative Anna Escamani from Orlando. And Representative Escamani, we appreciate you joining us this afternoon here on Fox 35 News Plus. Obviously, tragic circumstances as you join us here from Tallahassee this afternoon.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. And it's a very difficult day here in the state capitol and in Tallahassee. And our hearts are with all of the impacted students and faculty and families at FSU. You know, when we're here in Tallahassee, we are deeply embedded in the community. I have many amazing FSU interns. And of course, in Central Florida, as you mentioned, we are home to many FSU grads and FSU families. And it's just incredibly heartbreaking to do watching these updates. And my heart just goes out to every person who's impacted by today's tragic of gun violence.
Representative, I'm curious. We had heard reports that at some point the folks were being asked not even to leave the Capitol. I'm wondering if you could kind of talk us through the impacts there and how you learned of what was happening and if there were any impacts or precautions that you know that you had to take at the Capitol complex.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, for those not familiar with the layout of Tallahassee, it's a pretty small town. It's very tight knit. Whether you're an FSU a student or a FAMU student or you work in the Capitol, everyone sees each other. It's very neighborly, and it's a small town. So getting from one place to the other is not that difficult. You know, when I have speaking engagements at FSU, it's a 5-minute drive down the street. And I've been to the student union many times working with the FSU SGA on different initiatives. And with that said, we were in back-to-back committee meetings this morning across the legislature and the House and the Senate. I heard about this tragedy walking out of my State Affairs Committee around 12 o'clock today. And it was a sergeant who manages security here in the complex with Capitol Police who notified me that there was a shooting at FSU. And the Capitol complex was also on lockdown. In fact, the exits were sealed and only one entrance was allowed during this time. And of course, as someone who has many FSU interns, our first reaction was to check on everyone we know to get safety confirmed and to do what we can also from a mental health perspective, since we know this is a very scary and overwhelming time for everyone impacted. From there, of course, we're in close communication with FSU governmental affairs, with FSU faculty and students, and doing what we can to provide what comfort to students right now in the Capitol complex, because we have many. And it's just an overwhelming experience also to watch your peers who were on site during this, to hear their fear, their stories, to see how shaken they are. It's a ripple effect. You have the first layer of those impacted by trauma, but then it's a ripple effect for all the different layers of those that are connected to this tragedy today. And with that said, we had a meeting of the Democratic caucus as well to check in with one another and see what we can do at a local level to respond to the health and well-being of our community members. As we know that there are impacted students at Tallahassee Memorial Hospital. You have the Civic Center, which is a meeting location for families to find their loved ones. And we're also sharing trauma-informed resources to try to address, again, this ripple effect of mental health concerns and stresses connected to such a tragedy.
Yeah, I'd like to go into that a little bit if we can, because we have we talked about a few minutes ago with John when he was in here. An entire generation that has grown up doing active shooter drills and those kinds of things, and some saying they never thought this would happen. Others saying they may have thought, sadly, it would just be a matter of time until they had to deal with something like this. And so now that there are so many students on this campus today who are many of them young people who will carry something like this with them for the rest of their lives, how do you address some of those impacts psychologically and when it comes to witnessing something like this?
Well, to your point, we have a generation of young Floridians and young Americans who have now lived through multiple incidences of gun violence. In addition to prevention trainings and gun drills, it's a very difficult environment to grow up in. And in fact, we have staffers and interns here in the legislature who survived and experienced Parkland and are now experiencing this shooting here at FSU. This evening, there was a scheduled event with a nonprofit called Mara's Voice. And for those who don't know this organization, it was started in honor of Mara, a young FSU student who was killed by gun violence at the Tallahassee hot yoga studio about 6 or so years ago. There was an event today with her sorority to honor her life and to uplift the importance of preventing hate and preventing gun violence. That event has now been canceled because of today's tragedy. So I provide those examples because we're in this environment where every day you walk out of your house, you're fearful that you may become a victim of gun violence. I think about it constantly, what I would do to protect those around me if I was the target of gun violence. And of course, the legislature has not taken leadership on this issue as it pertains to access to firearms. We have taken leadership on hardening of different institutions. And of course, there's been the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas School Safety Act, which put into place good positive provisions. The legislature is unfortunately trying to peel back. But on this mental health front, we need to continue improving investments to school safety, not just in the hardening of our schools, but also the mental health of our schools.
From Tampa Bay's #1 news station, this is the Fox 13 4 o'clock news.
At the windows, we saw cops running, students running. It was just like complete chaos. Everyone was like running all over the place.
Panic at Florida State University as a suspect opens fire, sending multiple people to the hospital. Good afternoon. I'm Haley Hines in for Linda Hurtado.
And I'm Chris Cato. Thanks for joining us. And we do